Good morning, everybody. Good morning. So until Jose, Aaron, and John gets here, why don't we start with some question and answers? So this session's for you. Why someone tells me any challenge you face, seller side, buyer side, let's just discuss what do we want to make this concept about. So when Aaron and Jose gets here, they can take this over and answer all the questions. What are your challenges? What are the challenges you guys are facing? Let's discuss. Any question?
That people are not ready to go like forward because the rates that they have now it's low, so they want to wait till it become better.
So you're talking about the rates being cause of the market being slower than before. Is that what you're challenging?
Yeah, exactly. So like if you have three, why to go to six?
Okay. And what was the example of this sort of challenge you've been facing? Is that the buyer side? Is that the seller side for not resistant to sell? Is that can you
Resistant
tell
to
me more
sell.
on this?
It's mostly selling.
On the seller side.
Yeah,
So they're telling you they don't want to sell because they have to purchase something at a higher rate and more expensive, right?
exactly. So like
Gotcha.
if you change it for something bigger, and finally, like I will keep it till the renewal part. Like if it stay 2 years or 3 years, I will keep it and will do the step after.
So they are currently not a motivated seller in that case. Do they want to sell?
I think so, but still, it's the phrase that I see a lot.
Okay, so the resistance you're facing is mostly toward the interest rate, and so at this time they're holding off until the interest rate changing, and possibly maybe there's a hope for them to upgrade their home and maybe coming out of the one that they have. Okay.
Exactly.
Um, Anyone else can jump in there, and how would you handle that? If you were facing this challenge of a seller keep telling you and you've gone through a few listing presentation or on the phone, the sellers are keep telling you, hey, I want to be on a sideline for now until the interest rate give us a bit of a let up. We're having a good rate right now. I want to sell, but what do I buy that I can have a better rate? And they're on the sideline at this time. How would you handle that?
I've got a thought. I came in a little late, but my name is Gerald Matthews.
Yeah, go
My
for it, Joe.
question is, you've got someone who's tentative about making a move because of the interest rate, um, which is understandable. But what you can tell them is that the interest rate will change, and so will the opportunities of what will be on the market. If this is something that you're interested in, it may be in your best interest to move on it now, and you can always refinance later.
I love that, Gerald. What about you, Yana? What did you think of that?
I think it's good, but I was given the same conclusion, but usually, as I said, maybe they're not so motivated, but me, I'm mostly door to door. So this is the phrase that I see a lot.
Mm. So maybe you want to practice that. Gerald, are you okay with doing a quick role play with Yana on this one?
I was
And
ready.
I have Aaron here as well. So sorry, I have Jose here. He can listen up and maybe he can jump in and do a bit of a coaching on this. Are you okay with that, Gerald?
I'll be glad to
I'm always
try.
on the other side.
I'm multitasking at the moment, but I'll be glad to try.
I appreciate it. So, Yana, you be the seller that you're resisting. Gerald, why don't you go ahead and do a quick role play on this?
Absolutely. So I understand that she's the seller, correct?
Yes, she's the seller. Yes, go for it.
And she's resisting wanting to list now?
Yes. So apparently, what she's resisting for is the interest rate and the market that is, holding off from selling. Because if she does, she cannot jump into any other properties that to upgrade, losing her current rate.
Okay. Well, I can respect your concerns about the transition that you would have to make. However, at this time, if it's imperative that you want to be out of this place, then now is the best time for you to make your move. As far as turning around to sell, I understand you're concerned about the rate, but the rate will change. The opportunities will also change. So if there's something that you see now that you're interested in, that you'd like to potentially look into and make an offer on, I would not worry about the rate because it will change. And when it changes, you can take advantage of that rate. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes, but still, like buying another house, it will be more expensive in this rate, and I have to fix it like for minimum 3 years. I have to pay it, so maybe I will wait for now. It's not something that I have to do. It's not that I can't pay my mortgage now, so I will wait, and the possibilities are always there. So no one knows what will
Absolutely.
happen.
The possibilities are always there. Let's revisit the reason why you were even contemplating putting your house on the market.
My kids, I have like my family grows, so maybe I would like to have more space,
Okay, more space.
but still, like it's okay. The house is okay, so I can keep it like this. It's not something
Okay.
that I have to do it now.
Okay. So it sounds like you have a lovely home, but your family's outgrowing it. And your concern is that you want to get out of it before you outgrow it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you can wait. I think that waiting can present a number of different challenges for you. Are there anything that you're looking at the moment that you would be interested in pursuing? Maybe we can look at some of those, and then we can compare where you are to where you could be. And then that can possibly help you to make a decision when you realize what you want and you see what you want and you see it as a possibility. It may change your mind one way or the other, but at least you'll have that information to process as well. Are you interested in moving forward in that direction?
So interesting. Yeah, we can think about this. Yeah.
Okay. I tell you what I'll do is.
Yeah. So.
Oh, go ahead.
Here's what. Just time out. Yeah. Time out.
Okay.
So this is good. So here's what I'm hearing. The first thing I'm hearing is you trying to convince somebody to do something. People will never do what you want them to do. They will do what they self-discover. The moment that you start to try to convince somebody to do something, you'll notice what happened was she started to dig into her position more. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
When you start saying things like, I think, nobody cares what you think. When you start saying things like, I believe you'll be able to lower rates, and bro, you're not a fucking economist. You have no idea what's going to happen to rates. That's you trying to convince somebody to do something. I need everybody on this call to understand something. That does not work. What works instead is to ask questions, to get somebody to self-discover. Okay. And you vacillated. So you went down the road of trying to convince somebody. Then you hit a dead end because she started to get defensive, and then you went back to asking questions. You asked 2 questions, and then you know what you said after that? I think.
Okay.
Starting to pontificate. Like, you know, I want everybody on this call to understand something, okay? Do you know what the barrier to entry was to get a license, depending on where you are? If you're in the United States, it was to get a 75 on a test, to have $1,000 and not be a felon. Since when did we become financial advisors? What specifically fits that criteria that we would be giving from that? Other than the fact that we just want them to do something because we only get paid when they do something. You see what I'm saying?
Oh,
so
yes.
Instead, I would get really, really clear. So, you know, tell me this, like what happens on the outside chance if you're still sitting here, the kids keep getting bigger and you're still in the home? Like, what would that mean for you and your family? I'm wondering if you did make this move happen, how would your life improve in some way? What would be the benefit to you guys personally? Because my job's to help you. I mean, it's never to talk you into doing anything.
Okay.
Well, you know, we'd have more space with the kids. Okay, so let's say you have more space and like this and that. What would that do for you? Well, it would be this and that. Da, da, da. Okay, and how would that make you feel? Because guys, we are not thinking beings that feel. We are feeling beings that think. You're trying to rationalize and convince somebody with words to do something. That's not why anybody on this call does anything. You do things out of emotion, not out of logic. You will spend 6 months studying something and then make an emotional decision. Emotion moves people. It causes them to take action, not logic. When you get into a logical debate with Yana, who's analytical, you're going to lose. You're not going to win that. So instead, help her to get into her emotion as to why she's actually even considering it. How would your life improve in some way? What would be the benefit to you personally? How would that make you feel? And I guess I'm curious, like if you had to wait 2, 3, 4, 5 years in order to get that feeling for you and your family, would that be okay with you? And then be quiet. You see, because what you did there is like you're just trying to push to get the appointment. You're going to show her properties, and guess what's going to happen? She's not going to do a thing. Nothing. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I guess I'm learning. I see the difference. I see the difference in discovery and in suggestion.
Yeah, versus you trying to like tell people what they should do. Like, you don't know what she should do, bro. Why? Like, why are you like, okay, you know how many people were posting 6 months ago that rates were going to come down? Oh, yeah, it's the best time. Fucking, they're going to come down 6 times. Blah, 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 blah. Have they come down once? Nope. No. So, like, what are we doing? You know what I'm saying? Well, it makes no sense. Nobody has any idea. Now, if people understood, I did a post 6 months ago where I said, no, they're not going to come down. If you understand inflation, there's too much money in the system. The only way you can get money out of the system is to make the cost of money more expensive, is to restrict people's access to it. That's why today they're probably going to hold rates again. Like, oh my God, I can't believe it. We're 4 months in. They haven't lowered it once. Yeah, that's because you're not a magician and you don't know what the fuck's going to happen. That's why. So instead, help people to self-discover why they want to do something. And if it's in their best, like, you know, what's their goals and objectives? What are they trying to accomplish? Why are they trying to accomplish it? And if she's like, well, yeah, like that really wouldn't be okay with me if I had to wait 4 or 5 years. Okay. So then I guess I'm wondering for you personally, if there was a way that you could sell this home and purchase another home that maybe had a more attractive rate, is that something you would be open to? Well, what do you mean? Well, there's these type of transactions called sub-2 that you can do, you know, in the United States. And, you know, we may be able to find a buyer. I don't know if you know this, but like VA loans and another type of loan, they're actually assumable. So if we could find a seller that has an assumable loan and you can get a rate that was more attractive to you, do you think that would make you more excited about, you know, moving? Well, yeah. It probably would. Okay, well, just by you saying that demonstrates that we should get together and discuss the options. May I make a suggestion? Then I close for an appointment. Not try to convince them of doing something and then try to close for an appointment to show them something. You think that you're accomplishing something, but you're not. You're just going to be showing somebody property who's not motivated.
Okay.
I think that there's another question that I would ask too. I was like, what happens if rates don't ever drop? You know? Does that mean that you would just stay here forever? Or like, what happens if rates don't drop for the next 10 years? Does that mean that you would just stay here forever? or
Yep.
does that you would just stay here for the next 10 years?
Hey, that's a fantastic question. So let me ask you this, Mrs. Seller. What would happen on the outside chance if rates didn't drop for another, I don't know, 5 to 10 years? You're like, what do you mean? Well, I don't know if you know this, but the last time the Fed funds rate was this high, it stayed this high for a decade. Did you know that? No, didn't know that. What would that mean for you and your family? Would you just make do with the smaller space? Do you see how like this is much more effective and efficient than trying to convince somebody? You will never convince somebody to do anything they don't want to do. People do what you want them to do. They do what they self-discover.
And that will tell you a lot about their motivation. Like if somebody's like, well, no, I wouldn't be able to do that. Like my kids, this, that, then you got somebody with a little bit higher than motivation than somebody who's like, no, like we would just stay here. Like we'll work it or that, or in some cases, I'll even throw out other options to them. I'll be like, hey, look, like you've got a great mortgage rate. Like, why don't you just add an addition to the property? Like, why don't you just build an addition? They're thinking about it, like might as well put it on the table. Like, why don't you just add square footage to the property? And
in
keep
doing that, when doing that, what you're doing is fleshing out like their thought process. You could also say what just popped up for me as he was saying that. It's like, well, I'm wondering, what if there was a way, like, would you perhaps, because you could probably get a good amount for rent for it. Would you rent the property and then use that capital to pay rent for the home that you want? And then just be quiet. See, they say, oh, no, renting is not an option for us. Oh, eliminated that. So by continuing to ask questions, to Jose's point, you're going to flesh out levels of motivation. Because right now, the way that it sits, if you went on that appointment, you have zero, you really don't understand what her motivation is. And you're going to spend the whole time trying to convince her to do something. And that won't work long term. And those type of leads hide the really good ones.
Yeah.
The people that are evasive, fucking, I don't know, and like, dude, they're not good leads. You want people that are like, yep, definitely going to move. Okay, so if we found you something in the next 30, 45 days, like you ready to make a purchase? 100%. What would happen if we didn't sell your home and like, oh, that's fine. We have a place to stay in the meantime. Like you need those type of people.
Okay.
The other thing that I want you guys to pick up on is what Aaron said about the assumable loans. I think that not a lot of people know about those. It's not for everybody, but I think just making aware of people that that's an option will separate you if they ever do come around to doing something. Most people are not patient enough to actually execute on one of those, but because you're the person that informed them of something that they weren't aware, all of a sudden you're different than most of the people. The other thing is that if somebody is really patient enough and they know about it and they're really motivated, they could actually execute that plan. Like we have a listing right now where somebody can come in with $100,000 down and they get a 3.999% rate if they come in with $100,000 down. I texted our EXP group. I'm like, hey, look, guys, this is the perfect move up property for somebody wanting to move up because of the square footage that the property is, basically. So just asking more questions.
And again, like really, I've said it multiple times and it's just to hammer it home. It's not because you didn't hear me the first time. Move away from trying to convince. It's not effective.
It's funny because I wrote down the same things when I put like the rates, when you said definitive statements, like the rates will change, or you said like the interest rates, this will only be for like, the rates will change. I was like, we don't know that, And when you say stuff like that, people lose trust. They think that you're just trying to sell them something, basically.
Because the truth is you are. That's the truth. I am trying to sell them something. And that's like, think about yourself when somebody's like approaching you about buying something. Like if they're like hardcore trying to convince you to do something, what's your natural disposition? It's to get defensive and to move away.
And then the other thing
versus somebody who starts asking questions. Well, Diana, my job. Yeah.
And then the other thing that I kind of looked at like a chart, Aaron, that had the amount of money in circulation, like basically the amount of money that's been printed or in circulation. And I looked at the 80s, bro. And in the 80s, there was massive inflation. And I looked at the interest rates in the 80s, and I look at what happened since the year 2000 to today, bro. It's almost 3 times the amount of money printed right now than in the 80s. So I asked myself logically, bro, like, I'm like, how is it that there's 3 times the amount of money since the year 2000 printed in the now versus the 80s? And how is it that they're saying that we have inflation under control? And how is it that basically rates are going to drop and inflation is under control when we had 3 times the amount more money in circulation? I had an opportunity, bro, to lock my interest rate for my refinance on my property a month ago. When everybody was saying interest rates were going to drop, I said, yeah, I want to lock it. I was like, I don't know if they're going to drop. And if they drop, I'm okay with it, you know? Like, and sure enough, like after I locked, interest rates kept going up, basically.
Yeah. So if you look logically at that, I remember being on mastermind calls with you, Jose, and we're looking at the 10-year treasury note over the last 50 years. If you look, which is what mortgage rates are based off of. If you look at the historical rates of inflation, and if you look at the Fed funds rate, which is the rate that banks borrow, from the Federal Reserve, there's been times in human history, multiple times over the last 100 years, where inflation got out of control, and you can see their response. Right. And you can see what they did to the Fed funds rate, and you can see what they did to the 10-year treasury note. And the last 2 times that there was lots of inflation, which was in the early 80s and then in the 90s, they raised the Fed funds rate up to like 5%, and mortgages hovered around 7, 8 to 10% for a long time. Like, just because I don't want it to be true doesn't mean like I can, magically cause it to be a different way. It's not an accurate assessment. So, again, history doesn't repeat itself, but it definitely rhymes. And me trying to give people guidance on what's going to happen is like economists. 8 out of 10 economists thought rates were going to come down at least 4 times. You know what that tells me? None of them know what the fuck they're doing. And they get paid to do that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, me relying on that. And Jose, we're having a conversation too. Like, whenever I hear people say like, oh, like, whoever's going to get elected is going to change things, or, oh, like if they change the capital fucking gains, it's going to, affect us. And, oh, you know what that tells me? That person is in complete reactive mode. That person is not co-creating with their experience, and they are at the whim of external circumstances. They are letting external circumstances that they produce. They're not coming from a place of power. They're coming from a place of scarcity. So when I start to hear people like hem and haw about that, whether it be from a business context or consumers, you're like, oh, okay, like I see where they're coming from. It's very clear to me. And we just have to get used to it, guys. Okay, most people on this call, the vast majority of you, if you sold real estate for 10 years or less, you've never been in an environment where rates weren't like really low. Never. You've never sold real estate in like a normal real estate market, ever. You don't even know what that's like, and you're beginning to experience what that's like, which is not everybody can buy. I met with a lender. I did a lunch and learn in Orlando. He said he's turning away 6 out of 10 people, guys. 6 out of 10 applications. That's called normal. You go from 6 million to 4 million transactions, also normal. We could expect probably 4 million this year, and probably the same next year. So instead of wishing and hoping and praying that it's going to get better, have the high levels of motivation, increase your skill sets. So I'm not trying to convince people to do stuff, but instead I'm helping them to self-discover so I can find out if they are an 8, 9, or a 10 motivation, and I can help them to accomplish their goals and objectives. Figure out what are alternative creative finance ways, because when money becomes difficult to get access to, where the opportunity is in creative finance. Ask yourself a question. How many of you guys on this call have actually spent any time trying to study creative finance? I know the answer to that. You see what I'm saying? Like, these are actual solutions to what's happening. But I just want to impress upon you that like it's not going to change anytime soon. This is the environment that we're in, and we're going to be in it for a while.
I had a client send me a purchase document from the 80s, and he bought his home subject to back in the 80s, basically. So that was very common back then. But just to make it kind of simple for you guys, like, okay, like what questions would you ask? Somebody says, I'm looking to sell and I'm looking to buy, but I don't want to wait or I'm considering waiting for interest rates to drop. I would be like, okay, so it sounds like you want to sell and buy, but you're thinking about waiting for rates to drop. You mind me asking, like, the next property that you're purchasing, like, what's important about that next property? Are you looking for something bigger, smaller, or like a different neighborhood? Well, I'm looking for something bigger, right? When you say bigger, what are we talking about? Like more square footage, bigger lot size, more bedrooms, just more bedrooms and more square footage. Okay. What's important about having more bedrooms versus staying in the 3-bedroom? Well, if I had more bedrooms, I'd have an extra space because I need a home office because I work from home. Okay. And then in terms of like getting to that bigger bedroom, like what's an ideal time frame for you to do that? Well, I'm okay with being here, but I really like to do it, but I don't want to do it until interest rates drop. Okay, well, what happens if interest rates don't drop for the next 5 or 10 years? Well, if interest rates don't drop for the next 5 to 10 years, that would be too long, and I'd probably do something. Or if interest rates don't drop for the next 5 to 10 years, I would just have to do something else. Okay, when you say something else, what do you mean? You just keep asking questions instead of like giving them your opinion, like, oh, like interest rates are going to drop, do it now. You're just asking and asking, digging for more motivation to try to put a puzzle together and see if it's something there, basically.
Yeah, and that's textbook, bro. So that's how you do that. Notice nowhere in there, even though Jose owns 57 doors, okay? He's a multi. He's actually qualified to give financial advice based on outcomes that he's produced. Not once did he do that. Not once. Just consistently asking questions to find out what their motivation is, what they're trying to accomplish, and why. Because the deal is, guys, we try to make ourselves the hero in the story. We're not the fucking hero. The hero is the client. We're the guide. The guide to just help them to get to their ultimate destination. So when you start to lead with like, oh, you know how many homes I've sold? Or, well, your home was on the market, I sold X amount. You're making yourself the hero, bro. And when you do that, truthfully, it's out of insecurity. It's very low level communication. It's because like I feel like I need to prove myself to you. Instead, notice, did Jose once say anything about his track record? Could he tell people, well, you know, we've sold $83 million worth of real estate in the last 12 months? Could he tell people like, you know, we're the #1 agent in Oxnard? Did he tell people like, yeah, you know, I have 300,000 followers on TikTok, 142,000 on Instagram? He could tell people all of that, but he doesn't say anything about it. Instead, he makes them the complete focus.
Not in that context, because there are other contexts where we do bring that up.
No, I know when people challenge you directly, you'll do it, but it's not just like when people challenge you directly. Well, what makes you think that you could get the home sold? Well, you know, I appreciate you asking. I know underneath that is you just asking me if I could get the job done. So what I'm about to share with you is not to brag or boast, but just to give you context. I've had the good fortune. I've helped 2,000 families just like you over the last 17 years get their property sold. So it's really not a question of me of whether or not I could or couldn't help. I definitely can. It's really just a question of me figuring out what the Morales family is looking to accomplish and why, and what's important to you. So we can come up with a game plan to help you to get what you want at the time you want. Does that make sense? Like there's a way to do that, but it's only when challenged. So the point being is, guys, it's like, if you noticed, he asked probably 10 questions, didn't make any statements, no opinions, no nothing. He's gathering lots of information before he actually makes a suggestion.
And I'm okay if they don't do anything. That's the difference. Like, I'm okay if they don't do anything. I'm just trying to figure out like whether this is somebody I should spend future time with. Here's other questions that I would ask. I would say, like, you live in Thousand Oaks. Like, have you ever considered buying in a lower price city like Santa Paula or Fillmore or Oxnard? Would you ever consider something like that in order to get something bigger? Hey, have you ever considered moving out of state? You know, have you ever considered moving to a different state? Why am I asking that? Because those are all potential solutions for them to get to a bigger house and not have a significant increase in their mortgage payment. They sell their California home for $800,000. They got $400,000 in equity. They can buy something for cash in Texas. Now they actually solved their problem, but I just asked a question presenting them for the opportunity. So along that talk track is like, well, what happens if interest rates don't drop in the next 5 to 10 years? Well, I would just stay. Well, would you ever consider a different city, something that's lower in price? Like, for example, like Santa Paula, Fillmore, or Oxnard? No, I would not. Have you ever considered moving out of state? No, I have not. Well, the reason I'm asking about the different cities and out of state, what a lot of clients of ours are doing is they're moving to Santa Paula or Fillmore, and they're buying a bigger house and having a very similar payment because the prices are lower. Or a lot of clients are moving out of state and buying a bigger house because prices are a lot lower in a different state. Is that something that you would consider, Adam? You know, all I'm doing is just like, have you ever considered adding to the house instead? Have you ever considered that? Well, what would that look like? What, like, if you did buy, like, what would your ideal payment look like? What is your current payment right now? What is your current rate? Have you ever considered an assumable loan? Well, what's an assumable loan? Well, FHA and VA loans are assumable. Did you know that? No. What does that mean? That means that if you find somebody with an FHA or a VA loan, you can take over their loan. The only catch is you have to come up with the difference from what they owe to what they're selling it for. Meaning if they owe 800 and they're selling it for $1 million, you got to come up with 200,000. But if you do, you can take over the rate. Is that something that you would be open to? How much of my opinion have I given in that situation versus how many questions have I asked? I think I literally just asked like maybe like 15 to 20 different questions. That's where we want to get to the point where we're asking that amount of questions. Now, obviously, I would soften up some of the questions a little bit so that it doesn't feel like an interrogation. But for demonstration purposes, if you can tell, I'm basically just asking different questions. And at the end of the questions, we're going to come up with like some sort of conclusion, like, nope, this person's not going to do something. They go on the coldest bucket, or, hey, this is somebody that we should potentially stay in touch with because the pain is high enough and they're going to do something at some point.
Exactly. So I think we've sufficiently belabored the point and hammered it home. Ask more questions. Don't try to convince people to do anything.
Yeah.
Did you hear that, Tim?
And instead of telling somebody interest rates are going to drop, hey, like, I know that everyone's saying that interest rates are going to drop. What are your thoughts on the market? Like, what do you think? I don't tell people the market's going to crash. I ask them for their opinion. I'll be like, hey, what do you think? A lot of people are saying the market's going to crash. Like, what's your opinion? Like, oh, I think the market's going to crash. You know, now I know what they're feeling instead of me trying to tell them, hey, the market's going to crash, you know?
And then you might follow that up with like, okay, and just so I know, because it could be helpful for me, is there anything specifically you're looking at that would cause you to feel that that's the case?
Yeah, well, blah, blah, blah. Or you may run into somebody saying, no, I'm not going to sell because I think prices are going to increase. You know, it's going to be very difficult for you to convince somebody that prices are not going to increase if they think that it's going to increase, you know?
Well, that and their motivation is based on price. It's not based on a need.
Yeah.
Guys, you only want to deal with people that need to do something. Not like it's not. So, okay. The human brain is doing two things simultaneously. Okay. The first thing that it's doing is it's trying to figure out, will this help me to survive or to thrive? Survival's like, you know, shelter, food, like reproduction, right? Thriving is like, okay, aspirational, right? The second thing it's doing is it's trying to conserve calories. So if your message is complicated for people to understand, they will stop paying attention very quickly. The same thing is true as if you don't present what you're presenting in a way of surviving and thriving, they will also not pay attention. So think to yourself, like if you're ever at a dinner party and somebody says to you, like, you say to somebody like, hey, what do you do? And they're like, well, it's a little complicated. Immediately, you know what your brain says? This will not help me to survive, won't help me to thrive. It's going to take too many calories. You stop paying attention. That's what happens. Okay. So, you have to be presenting it in a way that's about survival or thriving, but I don't know that unless I ask a lot of questions. Do you see? If somebody makes their motivation primarily based on money, this is not the environment for them, bro. So it's like, I might say something like, okay, so it sounds like your main motivation to sell the property is really just tied to the amount that you can get. There's not like a need or something that you're trying to accomplish. And what you'll do is just stay put until, the marketplace is favorable and we'll pay you that. Is that right? Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay. Well, based on what I'm hearing from you, it really seems like this marketplace is not really, the best environment for you to accomplish what you want. So what I'd like to do is just get your email and I'll send you updates every once in a while with regards to what's going on in the market, things of that nature, and give you updates with regards to pricing. So that way, if the market does change, we can have a conversation. How's that? And then you move on, right? Part of the challenge for agents is that they spend entirely too long with people that aren't motivated and they don't have an internal mechanism because they don't ask enough questions to actually find that out up front. I see a lot of heads nodding. Mm-hmm. Nino, you got a question? Of course you do. Let's go.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I have a quick question. How do you handle the objection when the buyer, you haven't signed the contract yet, and they don't really they're asking for a first visit or something, or to show them properties without signing?
Oh, you mean like a buyer broker's agreement?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where are you geographically? Are you in Canada or are you in the United States?
Yes.
What
Toronto,
are the rules in
Canada.
Canada? I know that the rules in the United States are getting ready to change. Do you have to have a buyer broker's agreement prior to showing property in Canada?
Yes, or before we actually give any opinion, we cannot. They have to sign a document, which is a RICO guide, where they want to either work with us or they want to be self-represented.
Yeah, so then I would just explain that. So I think the only reason that we don't explain it is because it's a little uncomfortable. But the way that I would propose that you start to think about that is like, would an attorney ever, okay, can you speak to an attorney without them having that conversation with you up front? No. Like
No.
They will say, hey, the initial consult is $150 and I'm going to ask you questions. If you decide to hire me, it's a retainer and it's $3,000 a month. They tell you right up front what it is. Like, are you clear on that? Yep, clear. Same thing with other professionals, you know what I'm saying? Accountants that will tell you, hey, I'm going to look at your books. I'm going to give you a report. If you decide to hire me, here's the cost, right? Here's what it'll be. So it's just an explanation. It's like, hey, I'm really excited to have the opportunity to work with you. I'm not sure, what I'd like to do is just kind of go over with you the process that's actually required of me based on licensure, for us to enter into a relationship together. And then we'll go over the options that you have. And then whatever you decide, I'll support you 100%. Okay.
Well,
So
I know that I heard that my friends. Oh, okay.
Go ahead. You want to start to object, Nina? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I heard that my actually friends, the agent is, they are on the third show and they haven't really signed anything yet. We don't want to feel committed to one agent. We are still want to see how we feel with other agents.
Yeah, again, which I'm appreciative of. At the same time, I need you to know and understand that agent is not abiding by the rules and the regulations of their licensure. So I would never want to put you or me in a situation that actually wasn't beneficial. I'm also aware that, you're a professional, and I'm pretty sure that if you were going to commit your time, energy, and effort to something, if your boss came to you and said, hey, we're not going to commit to you yet, we just want you to work without any level of commitment or pay for 3 to 6 months, and then we'll make a decision. Under that circumstances, would you proceed? Would you be comfortable with that?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that was our thought process as well. Thank you.
And they'll probably be like, well, no. So it's like, listen, I understand it's a commitment. So I'm not asking us to get married. Like, I want to be clear. So there's 2 different ways that we can work together. The first way is that you hire me for 120 days and I'm your agent and we exclusively work together. I'm going to give you all my time, energy, effort, and resources. I only take on about 10 clients at a time. At maximum, or 5 clients at a time maximum, so I can give you the service and results that you provide and give you my undivided attention. And if I determine that you fit that criteria and your motivation is sufficient enough for you to be included in that 5 and you feel comfortable with me, then great, we enter into an agreement, and for 120 days, we work diligently to find you the property. The second way we can work together is you sign this document, and this will state that for this showing, if any of these properties that you take a look at, you purchase, then for the next, 4 months or 6 months or whatever it is, then I'd be entitled to a professional fee. So I guess my question to you is, based on what you're looking to accomplish and why, based on where you are in the process, which one of these options do you think you feel most comfortable with? And then be quiet and be totally okay with whatever they choose.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah,
Aaron.
for sure. So again, this is just like, so what I'm aware of is most agents are, and I'm not suggesting this is true for you, but it just is in general. So I know it's a true in general. Most agents are very buyer heavy. 60 to 80% of their deals are buy side deals. And for the most part, particularly in the United States, they've never had to, it's never been mandatory to get it something signed. So that's the only reason that we didn't do it. Like nobody on this call would ever take a listing without a listing agreement. And the reason why is because it's mandatory. So the same is going to be true with buyers. Now, the only reason we don't have that conversation up front is because we're afraid to have it. But in any other profession, that's what's customary, right? Doctor, accountant, attorney. The first question they ask you when you walk into the doctor's office is, how are you going to pay? What is your insurance? When you're booking the appointment, they ask you, what is your insurance? They won't even book the damn appointment with you unless they take your insurance. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? They won't even come see you, bro. You could be like, yo, I'm really having a hard time. They're like, that's great. What's your insurance? Oh, we don't take that. You got to call somebody else. Got to go. Bye. And hang up. Like you need to have that mentality. And the only reason I would be kind of hesitant to have this conversation, truthfully, and I mean this lovingly and respectfully, is because I don't value my time. Like if I'm going to take time away from my children, from my wife, from like my organization, from my fucking, all the other stuff that I do, I need to know, like, I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for a commitment. And then if they're not willing to commit and don't want to sign anything, it's like, listen, I appreciate the opportunity. Those are conditions that I personally am not comfortable operating under. So I can refer you, or perhaps maybe you should call that agent that your friend's working with. I appreciate your time. I wish you the best of luck. And then you move on.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you.
Bro, don't let people try to take status away from you. That's what she's doing. She's trying to make herself like more important than you, like bigger than you, like stronger than you. You know what I'm saying? I always take the status back. If they try to take it from me, like, well, we're not comfortable committing. It's like, well, truthfully, I don't know if I'm comfortable committing yet. We'd be able to determine that based on some questions that I'm going to ask you with regards to your level of motivation, your level of sincerity, because, I'm going to be spending all of my time, energy, effort, and resources for however long it takes to help you to get a property. And I don't get paid until we get the outcome. So part of this conversation is you deciding if you feel comfortable with me. And it's also me deciding if you fit the criteria for us to work together and for you to be included in those 5 people that I help, purchase a property each and every month. Fair enough? Like immediately, like, don't fucking do that. Nope. Immediately, I take the status back. So people are like, well, you just want the listing. Well, truthfully, I don't know if that's what I'm interested in. I'd be able to determine that if I ask you some questions with regards to your motivation and what you're looking to accomplish and why, because here's the truth. I'm in the business of selling properties, not collecting listings. So if it makes sense and your motivation is sufficient enough, I know I can help. It's not a question if I can or can't. It's really just a question of me figuring out what you're looking to accomplish and why, what's important to you, what your goals and objectives are, and then coming up with a plan to help you to get what you want, the time you want. Does that make sense? So immediately, what am I doing? Taking that fucking status back. Don't do that.
Great.
I think somebody has a question. Somebody's telling somebody to raise their hand or something like that.
I think somebody wanted to role play probate.
Probate. Yeah.
Yep, that was me. Does anybody want to role play probate with me?
Let's go, Ramy.
Yay. Ring, 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 ring.
Hello.
Hello, Aaron.
Yeah.
Aaron, thanks for taking my call. It's Mark Ramey. I'm a real estate agent here locally in the Kissimmee, Florida area, and I specialize in probate and estate sales of real property. Was reaching out to you because I noticed you're about to be, or perhaps you already are, a personal representative for the John Doe estate. Was calling specifically regarding the home on Main Street. Was wondering if it would benefit you to learn its current retail value, or if you were considering having it on the market.
I don't know. Like, how'd you get my number?
You know what? That's a great question. I actually have someone that that researches at the courthouse the personal representatives, because my job is to guide personal representatives just like you through the process, whether you decide to sell or not, so that you get the outcome that's going to be best for you and your family. So I guess, is it ideal for you to have this home sold in the coming months, or is the family going to keep it forever?
We don't know what we're going to do next, but we're really just going to wait until, we hear from the attorney.
Don't know what you're going to do next? That's perfect, Aaron. And thanks for sharing that with me. I appreciate it very much. I guess I'm curious. Ideally, if you had to guess what the family would like to do with this home, is it ideal that y'all keep it in the family, or are you going to be partners in it as a rental? What were your thoughts?
I don't know. I mean, I got a couple siblings, and we just got to talk about it.
Okay. So you got a couple siblings, and it sounds like it's going to be your father's legacy to the three of you. Do you think that it's ideal for the three of you to be partners in this home for an extended period of time? Or do you think that it would be best for you to get your portion of your father's commitment to you all out of the property and move on with your lives?
Yeah, again, like I'm not sure my one of my siblings actually lives in the property. So, we got to deal with that. But you're welcome to give me a call back maybe in like a few months.
Aaron, thank you kindly for that. And I'm just curious, do you know if one sibling, do you think that they're going to want to remain in the property? Is that going to be ideal for you and the family?
Well, I mean, they definitely want to remain there, but they're not paying anything. So, we got to figure that out.
So if I could help you with some ideas around helping them remain there, if that's their goal, would you be open to me sharing some thoughts with you?
Well, what do you mean?
Well, so I guess I'm curious, if they want to remain in the property, are you and your other sibling, the one that doesn't live there, are you open to just letting them live there, endlessly, without paying you anything? Or are you going to be looking to them to get rent, or do you want them to buy your portion of the equity out of the property?
No, I mean, I don't think they have the ability to actually buy me out.
Okay, so they don't have the resources to buy you out. So then would you and your other sibling be willing to let them live there and pay you rent, or rent free?
Well, they can't pay us rent, so that's not an option either.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I guess knowing that they can't pay you rent and they can't buy you out, what other options were you considering?
I mean, really the only option is, I think at some point, is to sell it. I mean, there's no other option, because I don't want to buy the others out.
Aaron, based on what you've described, I would agree with you. I mean, in order for you and your other two siblings to get your father's legacy that he left to all three of you, those proceeds, the home would need to be sold, and then those proceeds would go to all three of you. Do you think that would be good seed money for your family member or your sibling that's living in the property, and you and your other sibling?
Oh, I mean, of course it would, but it's just challenging. So, I got to talk to them about it, talk to the attorney, and then I'll get back to you.
That makes perfect sense. And, at this time, being that it's a homesteaded property and passing to linear heirs, it technically passes outside of probate. So I guess if the goal is to sell it, you could if you chose to, and this isn't to create urgency, but just to let you know that it's an option, you could proceed with putting it on the market whenever you like, provided that three criteria are met. May I share them with you?
Sure.
Number one, that it's a homesteaded property, which it appears this was your father's homestead, correct?
That's right.
Okay. Number two, that it's passing to linear heirs, which it's going to you and your siblings. And then number three, that there's no fighting or disagreement amongst the beneficiaries. Are you and your siblings, do you think you're all on board, since your one sibling that's living there can't pay you for the property, that you would sell the home?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's just, I'm not clear on how to deal with, my brother that's living there.
I understand. Well, because I've specialized in helping families like this since 2008, when my own father passed, what I'm aware of is my intention would be to guide the three of you to the greatest outcome. And if that includes helping the sibling that's currently in the home find their next place to live and get you maximum top price for all three of you to benefit, I guess, is that an outcome that you think would serve you all?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so.
Okay, so if I was to do some research to determine realistically what the highest paying retail buyers would pay for a home like that, and then net bottom line what you and your siblings could expect to receive after the sale, so that you know the resources that you have to move on with life, is that information that would help you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, so if I was to put this information together and we were to have a brief Zoom meeting to go over that, when would you say that you and your siblings would be available to go over this information? Afternoons or evenings? Which is better for you?
Probably evenings.
Evenings? Great. I have some availability tomorrow night, or would you prefer to connect on Friday?
Friday be fine.
Friday, great. I'll put you down. Would you want to do like a 4 o'clock or a 5?
I don't know. I got to talk to my siblings first. Like I'll figure out the time.
Terrific. Yeah. And so in the meantime, I'm curious if we were to pencil in, like say a 4 o'clock and you had to bump that to a 5, I've got a big eraser on my pencil. I certainly could be flexible for you. So if we penciled in a 5 and then I confirmed it with you, how would that be?
That's fine.
Okay, great. I'll put you down for 5 o'clock and I'll look forward to speaking with you on Friday, you and your siblings. I do have a great deal of respect for you and your investment of time. Do you have just a moment that I might go through a handful of questions so that I can be most prepared and efficient with your time when we do speak on Friday?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
All right,
great.
good. So it's clear that you know what you're doing. I know we've worked on this together as a team for a while and kind of, cultivating this source of business for you. And for you, after we, spend time working on it and stuff, like how many listings per year does this equal for you?
Last year it was 20 listings.
Yeah, which is awesome. So, yeah, look at everybody's eyeballs popping out of their head. So, knowledge is power, I promise you. And for me, when I was high in production, it was like 50 to 60 listings per year. Mm-hmm. And I guess for you, tell me first, like how that felt for you, like walking through that.
The script?
Yeah.
Well, initially I was nervous because I'm on a call with a whole bunch of people with their eyeballs on me.
Yeah.
But otherwise it was comfortable because I do this all the time.
Yeah, you do it all the time. And it shows that you do it all the time. So, yeah, and I can hear that in your voice a little bit when you started, because it was like kind of like you were reading sort of thing. But I know you do this all the time. And yeah, so I think that was good. There's a couple of things that I would just tweak a little. I mean, obviously I hear the influence in what you're doing. You're utilizing the script that, I shared with you on how to have these conversations with people. And just a few things. So with somebody like him, you started to go down that path. You did a great job asking lots of questions. You're super empathic. I know you probably do this anyway. It's like when in the opening, I say something like, I was calling very respectfully, of course, with regards to the real property. So that like respectfully and with tonality, it's letting them know from an emotional perspective, like I understand this is an interesting phone call and that you're going through something difficult. Simply just to find out if ultimately, yourself and it looks like your siblings, Susie and John, if you guys had decided at some point you'd like to get that home on the market and to get it sold. So you did do that, but just like, what's a little tweak on that? And then when I mentioned that my brother was living in the property, it's like, oh, I see. And again, I appreciate your willingness to share. The more you're willing to share, the better equipped I am to provide you with any information that could be helpful or useful in some way. So my intention in asking my next question is really not to be nosy, Mark. It's just to see if I could give you any more information. It's not uncommon that a sibling be in the house and they not have the financial ability to continue to maintain being in that house. Is that the situation here? And then be quiet. And then I guess I'm curious, if you had it your own way, right? I'm aware you have siblings. If you had it your own way, do you have a preference either way, whether to hold on to it or to sell it? So again, I'm asking similar questions. I'm just doing it perhaps in a little bit concise kind of way. And then words. Fewer words. Yeah. Economy of words. Which again goes with the human brain's expenditure of calories. If my brain, if I have to expend too many calories to fucking understand what you're saying, I stop paying attention. So that's why the economy of words matters. And then when you were like, well, yeah, I mean, my preference would really just be to sell it. Okay. And then when you asked a bunch of questions to get clear on it, like, okay, and then does your other sibling, because it's not uncommon, sometimes one sibling wants to keep the property because it sounds like you would like to sell it. Do they have the financial ability to actually do that? And they're like, no. Okay. So it really sounds like that the ultimate goal and objective at some point will be able to sell the property. You're just trying to work through the logistics of that and simultaneously trying to preserve familial harmony. Is that right? And they're like, yeah, that's exactly right. All right. Well, and I oftentimes find when families are having just discussions, because it sounds like you guys have discussions to have, you and your siblings, particularly the other one that's not living in the property, with regards to how to proceed, that it can be very, very helpful or useful to get a clear, realistic picture of equity, right? Because I know these online sites give you an idea, but usually it's a wide range. So to get like a really crisp, clear picture of if you guys did proceed with selling, what you could expect to receive, and net bottom line with the proceeds of either you and your family when it all shakes out, do you think that could be helpful or useful to you? And they're like, well, yeah, all right. And then I oftentimes find as well, and I don't know if this is applicable in this particular situation, maybe you guys have addressed it already, that sometimes families can need some extra help or assistance in preparing a property, such as maybe like an estate sale for items on the inside that may, have value, help stuff get cleared out, donate local charities, that sort of thing. Do you think that would be helpful or useful? They're like, yeah, probably, but I don't know what I'm going to do with my brother. When I said that to you, I think there's an opportunity there for you to demonstrate competency. So it's like, yeah, I understand that that's touchy, and there's really, and again, I'm not an attorney. I'm just going to share with you like a few options that you have briefly. One option is, my experience is that when people recognize that you're going to proceed with selling, it usually moves the process forward. And if we can put in front of them like, hey, here's how much we could expect to receive, then that might kind of grease the wheel, so to speak, and they become cooperative. I guess my question before I share with you the other option is do you perceive there being kind of a lack of cooperation from your sibling? And then quiet. And they're like, well, yeah, I think he's going to be a pain in the ass. It's like, all right. So the first option is honey. Maybe you guys offer them a little bit more money, in order to be cooperative, like that sort of thing. The second option, which is really not the optimal option, but it is an option, is that eventually you would have to do what's called a partition. And essentially it goes in front of the judge because they can't hold you up from selling it. The judge will rule in your favor. The property will be sold. And the cost of going through the partition would come out of the other siblings' funds. Now, I'm aware that that's a lot of information at one time, but does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay. So being that that's the case, may I make a suggestion? And then I would close for the opportunity to have the conversation with them.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So great job, though. And it's clear why, you take as many listings as you do from this source. It's a fantastic source. I actually dropped in the chat. I created a course showing people specifically what to say and how to say it, where to get the data, how to get the phone numbers. I had a guy DM me the other day. He, like Mark, he purchased the course, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago. He's already taken 3 listings. He keeps DMing me every time he does it, which is awesome. So great job, bro. Hey, Jose, you got any input on that? If he's still here? Did he leave? He left. John, are you still with us? You working out? What the hell are you doing, bro?
Yes, sir. I'm here. Before we go, I just want to say, if you haven't met Aaron in person, first of all, he's really tall. Second of all, if you want to see him in person speaking, rocking the stage, and you're in Western Canada, we are holding an event called Build Vancouver, July 8th and 9th, and Aaron will be here. So buy your tickets.
In the house, bringing the thunder and the lightning and the brimstone. Even if you're not in Canada, you should fly and come hang out. Let's go.
Yes, sir.
Hey, John.
All right.
Question.
Yes, sir.
If I was to buy a ticket to that, does that give me credit towards one of my EXP events that I have to attend?
Unfortunately, not for Icon.
Okay.
Yeah. Great question, though. Appreciate you asking. Summer in Vancouver is phenomenal, so I look forward to seeing you all here. I will post in the 2-comment chat. All right, guys, make it a great day. Aaron?
W's in the chat, team. Let's go, let's grow. Peace.
All right.